Well, aloha, my name is Mr. Akau, or Arnold Akau. I actually am an alumni here. I graduated back in 1996, and I'm a parent. I had a daughter, Kailana. She graduated in 2020. And then Lehia is a senior now. She's graduating this year, so she's my daughter. So I actually came back here to work after being away for some time. I got hired as the network and AV administrator, which basically is a kind of a big, broad term. But I help to take care of the network, the wireless network, the wired network, everything that entails that. And also, because of my background, I have a background in AV. So I take care of some of the school AV. So like some of the pro sound, a lot of the projectors in the classroom, TVs, Apple TVs, stuff like that. Yeah, actually, it's not exactly. I'm not exactly an IT person. I didn't go to school for it. I had my own business for some time. I had my own business for about 10 years, and I did custom AV and some networking. So I worked in a lot of the custom homes here around the state, and I installed cool stuff like home theaters. We did lighting control. We did security systems, stuff like that, like a lot of higher end stuff. And I kind of cut my teeth on that and kind of got to know about networking. And then I actually know Mr. McKenna, and he kind of got me hired here. So a typical day is for me is I come in kind of behind the scenes. I start a little earlier than everybody, and the first thing I do is I check the network, make sure everything's up and running okay. Um, Nowadays it's a little easier because everything's on our devices, so I can actually check it from my home if I want to, from my phone. Everything is app based, so that makes it a little easier than it was 10 years ago. But that's kind of like the most important part of our job, is to make sure that when the students, teachers, everybody arrives, that the network isn't down and it's up and running. So check that. I also am involved with the gate security, and camera security camera surveillance. So I do check on some of that stuff too, just to make sure it's up and running. And then throughout the day, we get work orders, or we have tasks or projects that we're working on. Well, behind my office in that room is basically, we call it the brain room. Um, and if anything in there doesn't have power or it's not lit up, basically the whole school would not, in my opinion, would not function. Um, as you know, the internet's connected to everything, or the network is connected to everything now. So students, teachers, administrators, everybody depends on it. We kind of think of it like it's almost like water, where you need water to survive. A business or a school nowadays needs an internet to survive. So yes, there's a bunch of different troubleshooting methods that we use, but for the most part is we secure our brain room. It's a secured building, number one. We have backup power. That's huge too. We have solar on our building which feeds a solar battery pack, which in case we run out of, if there's no helical power, we got a backup power there, stuff like that. It's different from the other jobs that I worked at, or the business that I had, in that it's more contained. For me, it's a little, I wouldn't say easier, but just more self-contained. Before, when you have your own business, you're all over the place. You're working long. I was traveling a lot, flying like to all different parts of the state, and working and hitting deadlines and stuff like that. So I like coming in, showing up to one campus, knowing where everything is. Kind of like I like to eat the school lunch, like little things like that. Being around my daughter. My daughter's still a senior, so it's her last year here. So that sort of thing is nice to be at HPA. Yeah. Oh, it's great. It's a great place to work. I was lucky enough to see it from the lens of a student, and then a parent. So as an alumni, and then now as an employee, and it's cool to see all like the different factors and the factions of HPA. It's evolved in some ways, in physical ways. Obviously, like there's more buildings. The class structures are a little different than when I was here. We had Saturday school when I was here, stuff like that. But in some ways, it's still the same. It's still a smaller school, more tight knit. It was diverse when I was here too. I had friends from American Samoa, Tahiti, all over the world, Saudi Arabia. It's just kind of, I still see that same vibe here. So in that way, it's a lot the same. And a lot of like the older buildings, like the chapel, like it's still there and looks exactly the same.
Hi, my name is Gabby Ewing. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager here at HPA. I just started in this role last fall, so I haven't been at HPA for even a year yet. However, I am an alumni. I graduated in 2015, so that's really what sparked me wanting to come back and work at HPA. I was living in the mainland and really wanted to come home, move home, and I was just waiting for the right opportunity to present itself. And this position became available, and I was lucky enough to get the job. Ooh, that's a typical day for me. So I oversee all of our social media channels. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And I also do, I would say 95% of all the video work and editing that you see that gets posted on any of our social channels. So that is a bulk of how I spend my days, which means that my days actually vary quite a bit because one day I could be filming all day, or I could be filming one thing for an hour or two different things at two different times, or I could just be editing all day long. So it really depends on what is in our schedule event wise, what I have scheduled with students or faculty to create content. And then I also oversee K through 12. So some days I'm at the village campus working with our kindergarten through eighth graders down there. So it just really depends. I don't really know what a typical day is for me, but it will usually include some sort of filming and or editing. And then I'm also in charge of our internal and external communications. So I do a lot of the email communications, getting those things out, and then putting together our weekly all school bulletin on Friday. A project I'm working on finishing up right now is we just did a big eLab feature project. So I worked really closely with admissions on this. They had a virtual event where they were featuring Dr. Bill and the Energy Lab. And as part of that, they wanted to feature students. So I did a series of student testimonials up at the Energy Lab where I interviewed them, got a bunch of B-roll, and we put together like 3 to 5 minute videos where they had an opportunity to just talk about their projects and all the cool stuff that they're doing up there. So that was kind of a bigger project that I'm still working on finalizing. We interviewed 7 students, I want to say. So just chopping those up individually and then also doing like a longer form uh, a longer form general energy lab video, kind of an overview of the energy lab and all the cool stuff that happens up there. My goal when I came to HPA was to really showcase everything that we do. We tend to have a lot of great visuals. So where we are located in Hawaii, the turtle research program, all the rainbows, those things are really great and as are a big draw for a lot of people that come to HPA. But there's a lot of other cool stuff that's happening here that we don't always get to see. And so one of my goals was just to really tell the story of HPA. And so I've been working a lot with students here at HPA actually to help tell that story. We've been doing this Kamakani Cafe series that I introduced this year, working with the Kamakani Cafe workers, the managers, and the baristas there. And that's been super fun, very successful, lots of great feedback there. And then we have also been working with our Kamakani student reporter, Holden, who does a lot of our athletics features. But something we wanted to focus on this year was residential life. So he actually started a series called HPA Cribs, which is kind of like a spinoff of MTV Cribs, where he goes into students' dorm rooms and they give a dorm room tour, and then he just asks them some questions about residential life. So I think that has been a big push for me this year. And then looking ahead, really wanting to do more projects like the Energy Lab project, where we feature specific programs and really tell those stories that are more academic heavy. HPA has so much going on all the time, and we have so many great things from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And then even beyond that with our alumni, our Ohana Association, there's just always so much going on, which is a blessing. And it's great because there's always things to capture. But at times it's hard to prioritize what's more important because I can't be everywhere all the time and pump out the amount of content that we would need to cover every single thing that's happening here at HPA. So that's the first thing. And then I think that the second hardest piece is the is the really academic heavy stuff. How do you make that more engaging and more digestible to an audience and a wide audience, right? Because we are talking to current students and families, we are talking to alumni, and we're also talking to prospective families, and that's a big part of who we are trying to reach. So I think, yeah, really telling that story while still making it intriguing and digestible, and also working with, I would say, like our teachers and our faculty members to really understand what visually is going to capture an audience, as well as have a good story to tell and be meaningful and really land with people. So that's something I'm still figuring out for sure. So I went to public school from kindergarten through 8th grade. And I think having that experience and then coming to HPA just made me very grateful for everything that HPA offers to its students. I think the amount of care that our faculty and staff have for the students, and I was an athlete here. I played sports, so even the care that the coaches had for me, I think that that is really special. I think a common theme I hear in my work, as well as just conversations that I have with friends that I went to school with here, other alumni, students now, community is a word that comes up a lot. And I think that that really is special about HPA. And I think people feel really connected to the school here. I know that's how I feel. I mean, I went to college and I would say I probably feel more connected to my high school than I do my college alma mater. So I think that that's something that's really special. And I think the having the boarding community aspect is very unique as well. I made friends from all over the world, some that I still keep in touch with from time to time. And I think it just gives you a different perspective of the world around you. And it's actually, I think, part of the reason I was so curious about the world and then went off to college away from home here in Hawaii and lived overseas because I had had sprinkles of that experience just on this campus. So I think that those are probably some of the things that make it special.
All right. I came to HPA as an elementary teacher, spent a number of years, helped open the Kona School on the year. I spent 1 year there and then came back up here and then opened the K-8 library when it was finally funded. In all of that time, I continued with the horse program after school. It was all on a volunteer or getting to ride basis at that time. It eventually evolved into a after school paying position as the other co-curriculars, or at that time they were just sports the kids could take, and horseback was one of them. So I continued with that. The high school has a regular program from Monday through Thursday, and then on the Fridays there's time for kids who are 8 years and older, and they can come and ride, and they can be HPA or they can be other students if they come and wish to ride here. We have 2 classes during the week that start around noon, and those involve we have one adult class, and on the Friday 1 o'clock class, we have a couple of kids that come from a school that finishes earlier, so they come and ride as well. So a typical day for us starts 2 days a week. We start around noon. The other 3 days we need to be here around 2 to be sure that the horses, some get special feed or need attention, anything to do with that. So a normal day for me is lots of times there's paperwork that I have to do. I have to plan how much more food we need, what activities we might be doing, if we're going to be going to any horse shows, and also setting up vet appointments, running the aspects of the outside aspect of it rather than being on the horseback. And then we're with the kids for the 2 hours that they're here on most of the program days. And then that's your normal day here. Then we have to push the horses out at the end of the day and make sure that they're safely out in the 100 acres that the school was granted from Parker Ranch as their personal property, which we now own. Well, thank goodness the maintenance department and we have a good relationship. So things that they can do, I put in a work order like anyone else, and it gets affected if it's possible or not. Things like that, because we have a volunteer who comes one day a week and works with children who are riders who are interested in dressage. We have to have the field lined for that. Sometimes we need to have the grass cut. Yesterday we discovered a minuscule pinhole leak at a water line, so I could turn it in, and they came and fixed it this morning. So they help us in that aspect of it. The rest of it, we pretty well keep up. Each student that comes to ride has a job before they get their horse ready. And so sweeping the floor in the tack room or helping do cleaning tack, all of these things we get together as a group and work on keeping the stable area as up to date as possible. As you noticed, we do not have stalls here. The horses are brought in on the days that we're going to ride them. Maintenance brings them in and feeds them. At the end of the day, we move them out through the back of the school and out to the 100 acres, which is where they live and come in from. So for me in the morning, lots of times I have to be on the computer checking in with other people that are coming to ride, setting up any appointments, and running my normal life of being a retiree, supposedly, but it isn't that way because there's always something going on. And we have some special programs, which we just finished one, which is the annual HPA horseback ride out on the mountains. So the horses and I went out for 10 days, and different groups came on different days to do a ride around on the slopes of Mauna Kea. And we've been doing that Samson did it. We used to ride to Kihina, and actually some people react and go, oh yeah, they remember doing that. And then we began moving out along the Mauna Road. At first we would camp, ride out from school, camp, and then ride back. And in these later years, we had the horses hauled a portion of the way out and then ride out to a cabin that Parker Ranch allows us as a subsidiary of their funds to use the cabin and stay out there. And we just returned from that safely once again, thank goodness. For a while, the middle school used to have a theme week in February. And so the middle school with a mixed class would come out for 4 days, and then they would leave and the high school would come out on the weekend. In these last few years, after COVID or in between COVID, then their days changed. And so it's mainly the high school came out. Last year, they came out for a weekend. This year, they tried coming out for 1 day of each weekend. The storm caught one group and they didn't get to come, but the other one did. I hope they go back to having the kids stay for the weekend. There's a whole atmosphere that's very different to be out on the slopes of Mauna Kea with the wind howling sometimes, the sun out there, the horses coming to see what we're doing and being able to trail ride out in that area. Very special, very different. We do other horse activities. For years, up to 40 plus years, we had a major horse show here at HPA, which consisted of dressage, cross-country jumping, stadium jumping. People came from all over the islands, and actually some kids came from other islands and used horses that we had to compete in those. As the years went on, our horses got older, our competitors changed their focus and became less interested in that. But we actually had a cross-country course for 2 different times that we rebuilt it because things changed. So if you look out, especially now near the Energy Lab, you'll see different little pieces left of what had been our cross-country course for years. Then there also was the Hawaii Quarter Horse Association here in town, and they ran shows that had English classes, and many of our students, we would haul the horses over, and the children would compete and doing whatever they felt was best. At this time, we're lucky enough to have the Lalamilo Saddle Club, and they put on a show once a year, which is out by the Parker Ranch stable area or where their rodeo grounds are. And then there's also at the Waikoloa stables in the last couple of years, a facility where they've been holding shows. And we go down to them when it fits in with the interests of the students and in the timing of what's going on at our own thing. Most of our shows have been English-oriented and had flat classes, walk, trot, and canter, 2 directions of the ring, some games, and then lots of jumping. And as the years have progressed, especially since COVID, we have not been able to go to as many shows because they're not offering as many, and we have not put any on here at school in these recent years, just looking at trying to bring other competitors here and getting someone to run the show because trying to get our students into the show and ready for it and doing a fine job in the show also means that we shouldn't be so stretched ourselves that we have to run the show. We are working towards coming back to having a show every other year here, but we'll have to see, especially since we don't want to give up the island or the overnight and the ride on the Mauna Kea. And lots of times that is in the planning stages, so it takes up more time. So my knowledge of the history, and it is recorded in schools' records as well, when Dick Thompson came here in the mid-50s, he was granted 3 horses. He was an equestrian from the East Coast coming to teach Greek and Latin, and he was granted by the bishop, I believe, as this was the boys' boarding Episcopal school. And he had these 3 horses. They were down behind the Episcopal church, and he broke and trained them and began a program of taking the kids who were boarding here who were interested on rides. He also helped out because he had different students that would purchase horses through his auspices from Parker Ranch. He would break and train those horses, and they would be ridden by the students who had purchased them. And then when they left for graduation, the horses remained here. When I came, the herd was horses that had been donated by other people that were able to be ridden well, and ones that had been bought and trained by Dick and left here or remained here after the students who had purchased them left. Then I came in the late 60s, and fortunately I came because not only could I teach at the school, but I could ride, and I began working with the program. At that time, we did not have an actual teaching program so much as being able to ride, do a lot of riding up in the hills, and experience all the joys and fun that I'd grown up with, and being able to find confidence in working with animals, having a good human and animal relationship, which has continued through all of these years, giving kids a sense of confidence on what they could do, being shown how to do things in the manner that we hope they do them, and then have them be able to show others and to use those aspects to build a good relationship between the herd that we had and their own self-image and their ability to be leaders, their ability to work and build success for themselves. As I said, I came to school here to teach, and I loved that and found it fascinating, went back and got a second master's and went into the library. And all of that was because I was continuing to work with children and doing the fun things that were aspects of it. I actually started the Hawaiiana program in the 3rd grade. So if you talk to any of my younger students back from those years, they'll tell you that we went camping for 4 days at the volcano and we hiked here and there. All of that was also part of the joy of sharing Hawaii and the life that we had here in Waimea with each other and with our daily lives. So I like it just because HPA has been a good school for me to work with, and I've found a lot of contentment here, and I've loved working with the students that we find here and being able to share the joys, especially of the horse program and the aspects that the things that horses brought to me as a child and being able to do that we can share it and find success for the students that come to ride with us here as well.
So my name is Willie Quayle, and I work here at the Ulu Malama Terrace Farm, where I'm in my 10th year in this position. It's a garden coordinator position, and also, as an environmental educator. And came to this space. I have a background in education. I did a master's of teaching program, and then got kind of disenchanted with that space and ended up going into the land stewardship field, and then had a way to combine my education and teaching with my love, which is growing food and connecting people to place. And so this position came up about 10 years ago, and since then I've been really pleased with how it's a combination of 2 of my great interests and loves. Yeah, I really like to just take stock of what's going on in the space. Like last night we got some rain, and so it's nice to come out here and feel things get kind of like they just seem to improve with the an evening like last night and you come out and I basically like to walk around and make a little list of things that needed addressing, things that are kind of prioritized by um, in what we have planned either with students or kind of like activities coming up, or and most specifically around our like donations, our community donations. So today we have a harvest for Kohala Food Hub, which will probably be some carrots in a bed that we're going to ultimately try to get 2 harvests out of. So we'll thin that today and then get them all set and get ready for the rest of the week. We had a couple racks of banana that came ripe over the weekend, so we've been working on that this morning, getting those ready, and those will go out for tomorrow's a donation at the Annunciation Food Pantry, and then we have a couple more at the latter part of the week in the Waimea Food Pantry, and then also the St. James Community Meal. So usually it's some mixture of like looking at the space, seeing what's needed, seeing how we're ready for our harvest for the week, and then also getting ready for classes and groups that are coming up. Yeah, that's generally it. I have 2 groups. I have 2 internship groups. So these are folks that are dedicating their time and getting course credit, but to just work in the space. So nice that there's that kind of level of student engagement in addition to the various classes that come up here just as part of their curriculum. There's like the things that are always happening that just require like regular maintenance. So we've planted out over the last 10 years a variety of like more perennial tree crops that are coming into production every year. And so managing that space and trying to kind of like build for the future in an agroforestry sense where we're working to have long-term food crops while also in the short term growing a lot of like what you might think of as like your typical garden vegetables, annual crops that we have kind of intermixed amongst these perennial beds, but also dedicated spaces where we're doing more traditional row cropping and building in a crop rotation where we are hopefully not taxing the soil at any given time. So those are the fun things that happen kind of on a routine basis. We also are some of the neat projects that I think are happening now, or we're building out some of kind of like our core like events within the HPA experience is like around your like your Uriel, your senior transition ceremony is always involved Ava. And previous to last year, it only had been like where you go and you procure the Ava from an outside source. And so in the last year, we've tried to be more intentional about growing the things that we're using for ceremonies like that. And so neat that we had a harvest of Ava. We then propagated a whole bunch of cuttings. And in this last few weeks, we had groups come up from the freshman class because it takes about 3 years to mature. So we're having them plant the Ava that they will then harvest as seniors as part of that ceremony. So starting to create some intentionality around just connecting people more to the, like kind of adding layers of meaning to their experience. And I mentioned about the Ava. That's usually a partnership with the 9th grade Hawaiian Studies, Kila Ha'aina, and that group comes up to both plant kalo and then plant Ava now. We work with the emu and prepping that. So there's those kind of collaborations. This week we have the AP Psych classes are coming up, and they are doing kind of like how does nature help people to de-stress. And so it's cool that a garden can connect in kind of endless ways. And so I like to think that we can fit this space into any curriculum. Last, I guess it was now 2 weeks ago, we had the U.S. history classes came up and they were working on a kind of a unit around enslaved laborers and the ways that gardens can be like a liberating force in those kind of tragic moments. And so we were able to cook together and kind of celebrate these foods that had helped sustain folks through a really hard time. Yeah, those are just a few examples. And then, as I mentioned, like we have the internship group that is a few class periods, 2 class periods. I do a capstone that's up here, and also just we have the after school programs. So the 2 co-curricular seasons is there's a garden offering. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how well we communicate what we do. I think it's important to realize that, the main question we get asked is where does the food, like, are we feeding our cafeteria? And we're not at a scale where we're able to make a significant contribution there. So where we've kind of focused is on those community donations. So I think if people understood that, they might understand that there's all sorts of ways that a growing space can be an extension of community work of like getting out there and helping people. And so that's where what we grow goes. I like to think of it also as like, I know it's on the outside of campus, but I think that there's pretty well demonstrated that it's like beneficial to be out in nature. And this is on campus, one space where you can kind of really feel that. So I would want people to know it is just like there's all sorts of little areas where you can come and just kind of check out for a little bit, spend some time in nature, get all the benefits from that experience. I really do welcome people to use the space for that reason. Yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty cool. I mean, if you were to like look around, you'll see that everything that has every plant that we're looking at is kind of 10 years or less. So if you think about that, multiply it out by 10 more years in succession on beyond that, like I think that this place is gonna really transform. I mean, and that's kind of the goal is that we're planting for the long term. There's trees here that won't really come into production for 15, 20 years, but 15, 20 years, it's going to be pretty neat because they will be starting to emerge from these lower layers and they'll kind of create a whole different feel for the space. So I'm excited for that. Even though whether I'll be here or not, I think that's the beauty of a growing space is that we're kind of investing in the future. There's a great quote about like plant trees that you may never sit in the shade of, and I believe that to be kind of the most wholesome work you can do is to like, whether or not you'll actually benefit doesn't really matter. You still do the work. So that's what we're here for.
My name is Patty Walker. I'm Director of Auxiliary Programs and Principal of Summer School. And here in Auxiliary Programs, we do a variety of things to support the academic day as well as bring people from the community on campus all year round, but especially during the summer. We support the school by managing the use of facilities so that they're not double booked. We do all of the mail and USPS, UPS, and FedEx deliveries that come to campus. So that's for boarding students, faculty and staff, faculty that live on campus. We provide rentals to the community to use space here on campus. We also do all the training for faculty and staff for learning how to drive vehicles, our buses, and CPR first aid training. We also host outside groups during the summer and provide our summer academies for students age 11 to 17 and also Kamakani Keiki Camp in the summertime for children age 5 to 11 or to 10. And those summer programs are really designed to help bring students to HPA who haven't been here before. And hopefully they would have a taste of what it's like to learn here and eventually become HPA students. The planning of these programs really it's a year-long process. We really never stop planning. Even during the year, during the summer, when we have our academies and our keiki camp going on, we're always looking at what could we do better next year or different next year. We're always looking for new ideas to bring something different to the summer program. We do have a rental property that HPA can host up to 30 people throughout the year. So we'll have different colleges bring a class here, stay in what we call Waiaka House, anywhere from 5 to 10 days to 2 weeks. Usually those universities that bring students or even other high schools that will bring students come. Usually they are studying a course either in coral reef ecology or sustainability, and then they come to our island to do their lab work. So that's a year-long process, and we are fielding emails from potential visitors. We work closely with housekeeping and security and maintenance to make sure that our facilities are ready when groups come to visit. So it's a year-long process, and it's a day-to-day. You never know what's going to pop up. I think people would be most surprised by how many people we have on campus during the summer. From June 1st to July 30th, we will have anywhere from 40 to 200 people on campus. We fill all 3 dorms. We also have rental space at the village campus. Those are people just coming as a group to visit, either doing education or service work. And then on top of that, we have our day programs providing our summer academies and our keiki camp. That's a hard question to answer because there's some things that are different during the summertime, I think, because everything that's happening during the summer is going through the auxiliary office. Where during the academic year, it's going through student life and the academics. So that's probably the biggest difference. But other than that, we run the same. We still have breakfast, lunch, and dinner served in the dining hall for the groups and the students that are here during the summer. We still have mail delivery. We are still running classes. They're just a little bit smaller. So there's a lot that parallels the academic year. I guess the other thing is our maintenance has a lot of work they try to get done during the summer when there aren't students on campus. So sometimes there's a bit of a balance between how we use space, but we work closely together to make that happen. I love this question because in auxiliary programs, there is no typical day. Really, there's 5 people that work out of this office, 3 of us specifically to auxiliary programs, and then 1 is specific to CPR, first aid, and bus driver training. And then we also have Miss Emmons who teaches driver's education. So there's a lot of coming and going in this office. We call it the revolving door. We eat our lunch in our office mostly because that's when other faculty and staff have time, or students have time to drop by our office because it's a downtime for them. So when they have questions, they can come in and talk to us. So there really isn't a typical day. A lot depends on, it's seasonal as well as what is happening. Right now, we're in the midst of registering for the summer program. So we're starting to get more busy. The closer it gets to summer, the busier it will get. And then come the end of the year, when you have graduation, the auxiliary team steps up and helps with things behind the scenes, preparation, making sure your baccalaureate lunch is set up and ready when you're finished with baccalaureate. We support opening days. We're always here to help plan and make sure that all the facilities are ready and that the materials that are necessary or equipment are set up. So it really varies. It depends on the time of year and what events are going on. So my background is in education. I've been in education for many, many years. I've been a classroom teacher. I've directed programs serving children from birth up to fourth grade, as well as worked with adults as parents in educational programs. So I've I've been involved with education in different aspects, as well as a teacher myself. And when I came to HPA, the first thing that came out to me was this is a place where best practices in every area of education has come together. It's like the best dream you could have for an educator, that we have the resources, we have dedicated faculty and staff, and we have administrators who are open to looking at what are best practices and what do we need to do to make that happen. I think the one thing that stands out to me that is most special about HPA is the environment. It's where we're at. It's either campus, whether you're on the upper campus or the village campus. Um, I've made a comment to people, you can't not learn here because it's so calm and peaceful. You don't have the distractions that you might in a more urban setting. Um, I enjoy that it's green, it's lush. I enjoy the birds that come and visit Kennedy Square after lunch every day. They're pretty fun to watch. So I would have to say it's the environment here at HPA that makes it special.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Kelsey. I'm the Director of College Counseling at HPA, and I've been here about 30 years. And our office helps all the students plan for college, identify a good school, and then help them with the application process.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy Montgomery. I started at HPA 20 years ago. This is my 20th year as a college counselor, and I have the good fortune of working with Mr. Kelsey and all the wonderful students here at HPA. I actually stumbled upon this profession, and I'm so grateful I did. I was actually an instructor. I was getting my PhD. I was a graduate student and was working on my dissertation, and I was feeling a disconnect, being home all day, just writing and researching and doing those things. And I applied to be a sub at HPA. And I thought that would be good for me. I can get out some days and just be with students, which was my happy place. And by virtue of having an application in here, when the college counseling position opened, and I expressed some interest, the HR director introduced me to Mr. Kelsey, and then
Best hire ever.
yeah, and we have been working together ever since. I saw the job description and I remember thinking, I didn't know this was a possible career, but it has everything I love. There was travel. There was lots of one-on-one time with students. There was like a heavy writing component. I love to write and edit essays. There was a dynamic aspect of it that is always changing within the structure. There's visitors that are coming in, so there's public speaking and getting to meet people. It was kind of my dream job that I didn't know until I started doing it. So that's my story. Thank you, HPA and Andrew Kelsey, for believing in me, because I hadn't been a college counselor prior to starting here.
Oh, when I met Cindy, I was like, natural. I knew she was a natural. So everything that she said about the job, I think we both feel that we have the best jobs on campus. It's super fun. I tell students, like, think about who you are first. So I kind of know who I am, and I don't like doing the same thing again and again. Every student is different. So I love being creative, having challenges, helping people, problem solving. It's just satisfying, and it fills my bucket. So when I started at HPA, I was an English teacher and a coach and lived in the dorm. And during that time, I was helping a lot of boarding students with their college process. And people noticed that. And the administration reached out to me and asked if I might be interested in being a college counselor. And honestly, when I was a kid, I didn't think I'm going to grow up and be a college counselor. But it happened. And as soon as, like what Cindy said, as soon as I started on the path of being a college counselor, it's just been a fun adventure. So loved it.
For sure. Yeah. And Mr. Kelsey and I both lived in Japan and taught in Japan prior to coming here. And I think we both agree that has pretty profoundly influenced the way we work with international students, having lived internationally and knowing what it's like to be learning a language in a different culture. And that's also something that is a foundation of the work we do. And perhaps one of the reasons we ultimately ended up working together.
Yeah.
Talk about
Sure. In the beginning, freshman and sophomore year, it's sort of big picture. And then the junior year, we start working with all of the students individually. So in the fall, we meet our juniors, and then in the spring, we usually meet them 3 or 4 times and more as they choose to. And we get more into the details of applying to college and researching schools.
I think one of the reasons that Mr. Kelsey and I are so well aligned in our college counseling philosophies, if you will, is that we really see the junior year as really about the student, not the colleges, in terms of self-exploration and asking the students to self-reflect on what makes them happy and how they'd like to use their education and their talents for the better good out there in the world, and kind of starting with that. We also, I think, are both aligned in the idea that everything in high school shouldn't be about college. So that's why we use that advisory system for freshman, sophomore year to just get the kids enjoying life here at the high school, getting involved in things that bring them joy. We typically just divide up alphabetically, with Mr. Kelsey taking the first half and me taking the second half of the alphabet. It feels equitable that way. And another benefit is that we get to work with siblings that come through and those families. And it's really nice to develop that relationship over many years with those families in this process.
Yeah, that's, we'd love to spend as much time as the student needs. And so some students meet with us weekly. Some students text us and talk to us over the weekends. Our office is open all day, so we have scheduled appointments, and then we have drop-ins. So at one end of the spectrum are seniors that are in here every week, maybe a couple times a week. And then at the other end of the spectrum are maybe students that visit us once a month, twice a month, something like that.
Yeah. I think that our office is kind of indicative of HPA in general in terms of student focus and high touch, just like the teachers at HPA offer to our students. So we are really available a lot for our students and whenever they need us. That's part of the joy for us, I think, is really getting to work closely with students on essays and applications and kind of dreaming big about futures and things like that.
And every student is different, so they have a different process. Some students have a very straightforward college goal, 1 or 2 schools, and we wrap it up and they know what they want to do and they predict admission, and it's pretty simple. Other students might be applying to 20 schools with many essays, and we help them with all of their essays. And then other students are really searching and trying to figure out the whole process, what they want to do, and they really want to spend time discussing those deeper questions. So depending on the student and what their goals are, we could spend a fair amount of time or a great deal of time, whatever they need.
I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. This idea that self-reflection is a necessary and super important part of the process. I think at a school like HPA, where going to college is just something that people take for granted, that sometimes students can forget that they should pause and ask why, right? And really think about how will these 4 years serve me? And then after that, how will I serve with those 4 years of college, right? So I think that a part that's overlooked often is how much we really try to get to know the students through our meetings and really understand what makes them tick, and where they might apply their strengths, at the post HPA. So that's probably something that's maybe not known so much. What else, Kels?
I think that's a great answer. We also try and help the students have confidence to tell their own stories.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of students don't feel that what they have to say might be great in a college essay, and giving them that confidence and helping them share their voice. I think that's a big part of it. Letting them know that their life experiences can be very compelling in a college application if they're authentic and they put time into telling their stories.
Yeah.
Boarding school is actually amazing for college preparation because the students, day students too, you have classes, APs, honors, and then co-curriculars, and then study hall for the boarders or homework every night. So independent schools and boarding schools in particular really help students with budgeting their time and organizing their time. So that kind of structured life and learning those habits of success in the high school is part of, I think, the process where our students go to college and they feel very ready for the academic demands.
Mm-hmm. And another really cool aspect of having HPA be a boarding and day student school that Andrew and I have talked about a lot over the years is how by virtue of taking classes and living and playing sports with and getting to know people from all over the world, it also influences our day student population pretty significantly, I think, in terms of their willingness and desire to look beyond our state and even beyond the West Coast to the entire US and to the world. I really think HPA gives a lot of courage and curiosity to our students because they've gone to school with people from all over the world, and that's definitely reflected in the college goals of our students. It's hard to say, but I would be surprised if there's another school in the state of Hawaii that has as diverse college placements as us. And I'd say typically 5 to 10% of our seniors are curious about or actively looking at schools outside of the United States, which I think is remarkable. Yeah, and that I think feeds right back to the fact that we're a boarding student with this really robust, amazing international population here.
It starts with geographic diversity, and then I think life experiences. But one of the things that Cindy and I both feel happens a lot is that our school is really influenced by the Big Island and by Hawaiian culture. And I think our students, whether they're from Hawaii or they've moved here or they're international students, they're taught values and life lessons and ways to interact with other people. And I think that kind of comes through in their applications, kindness, thoughtfulness, inclusivity, and a willingness to take risks and adventures. So the students are going to travel very far from home to go to college just by virtue of living in Hawaii, right? And so our students sort of bring all of those positive traits with them. And I think a lot of colleges know that. They know that about Hawaii in general, and then even more specifically about HPA.
Yeah, I totally agree. Along those same lines, I think that our students are refreshing in the college application pool these days because they really embody healthy excellence. They're still teenagers that are deeply involved in their communities, in their dorms, and they're taking very, very rigorous classes, but have a lot of intentionality behind why they're doing it. And they're able to connect that to possibly things that are happening in our island community. And because of that, I think they really stand out in the application process. That joy, that intention, the purpose and why they're doing what they're doing is super clear to the colleges, and it doesn't feel engineered. It feels authentic. And I think that's really part of the HPA experience. And we owe a lot of that to our teachers here who support our learners in a way that make them feel celebrated and give them courage to go out and try new things. So yeah, I think that really differentiates the HPA student.
Yeah, as parents, we're very proud that our kids go to HPA. And yeah, I can just think of so many stories that have happened in this office where a student's filling out a scholarship application and then encourages another student to fill out the same application. And they're going to be kind of competing for that scholarship, but they don't think of it that way. They're like, you'd be so great for this scholarship. You should apply for it. And you don't necessarily see that in other places. So there's definitely students really thinking about each other and helping each other. And that's special in the big process.
Absolutely. I think we are very unique in that way. The collaborative spirit here on campus, right through the college admissions process, which you'd think would be competitive. Yeah, and it is absolutely not. Students sharing their lists with each other, celebrating each other's successes, supporting each other when things don't go as they should. It's really a special community. Kindness is all around us. Sometimes we don't. We forget to notice it because it's just here, the care and kindness, but it definitely is part of the college admissions and application process as well.
And that's definitely something that we try and encourage. So for us, applying to college should be healthy and fun. And that's definitely our first goal. Not so much the college results, which we love when they're great, but it's more about having a healthy, positive experience. And one of your first experiences of being an adult handling this.
Yeah. And if we do that process well, which we try to do, the student takes ownership in that process, and then regardless of the outcome, feels satisfied with that. And many times the outcome is exactly as they hoped because they took that ownership in the process and knew why they were doing what they were doing. So I think anyway, just what Andrew was saying, it absolutely plays into their success, and the fun and the joy in it is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, at the end of the year, we both sit down and we go through all of our students and talk about them. And the ones where, and there's many where we're like, that was so great. We celebrate them. And a lot of times it's just we celebrate them for how they navigated the process. Maybe they were disappointed and they had a great attitude about it. All of that. It's like having your kids go off to college every year. That's how we feel.
Yeah. And the college application process is an interesting process for students because up until now, often in their lives, if they put their entire self into what they were doing, they worked incredibly hard, they could guarantee a result on the other end. And college admissions is not that process always, right? So the student could put their whole heart into it, have taken all the right classes, have done all the right things, be incredible leaders and community members, and amazing application. They did everything quote unquote right, and they may still not get that result. And so there's so much learning that can happen in this process. But if they go into it knowing and having satisfaction in the application they've created, we know that they're going to be okay with whatever results come out. And so that's our major goal, I guess, when you really think about it, is supporting them and feeling really good about the application that they're able to submit to their colleges.
And not losing themselves in the process. Just the strong connection they have to this place, to our campus, to the town, to the people here. I think a good way for me to describe it is if you put a lot into HPA, if you put a lot as a student or a teacher, it's transformational. So once you got a transformational experience, you always remember it, and it's always a huge part of who you are and your life. So I think our graduates who put a lot into the school have had it be transformational, and they think of it as one of the most important 3-4 years or longer of their life. And so that connection to this place is forever.
Yeah. And by virtue of having had that experience at HPA, I think that there are certain qualities that they carry throughout their lives. I definitely feel like HPA graduates have a commitment to community, whatever that looks like, whether it's working out in their community or whether it's building a community in their dorm or in their college. I think they really see the value in building community. I also think that they tend to be bridge builders on campus in terms of not being afraid to interact and befriend diverse groups of people. That's not intimidating to them to walk up to a new group, somebody who looks or has a different background from them. And I think in that way, they're really valuable bridge builders in any community they join. And then I do think, we talk about this idea of wonder. It, I do think that HPA graduates in general have a curiosity about the natural world a lot of times, having grown up and lived in such a beautiful place. And I bet that also shows up maybe in the choices they make when they leave our community as well.
Another thing I would add is that it's so unique to have a strong Native Hawaiian culture and a strong local Hawaiian culture and a strong international culture, and then a strong culture of people who've moved to HPA, all interacting and getting along well together and being respectful and learning from each other. So our students go out into the world not being just one thing, not just being an international student or a local student. They're kind of a blend of being friends with each other through high school. And that definitely stands out. There's kids that graduate from other schools in Hawaii that don't seem the same to me as a typical, those who stereotype a typical HPA kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I am the registrar for the upper school, and I'm also the AP testing coordinator, and I kind of take on other duties as assigned. I've been doing the registrar part of the job for about 4 years, and the testing coordinator job I've done for about 6.5 years. And mainly as the registrar, I am responsible for myself and Miss Lee Howe. We create a schedule for the students. So we put the classes in all the blocks, and then we register all the students. Another thing that I do is I audit transcripts for incoming students to determine whether or not they'd be able to meet our graduation requirements and graduate with us. And then also I just continuously audit our HPA students to ensure that they're meeting the graduation requirements too. So we don't have an electronic system for credit auditing. We utilize these manila folders, and we hand count credits, but it's a system that works. So we're using it until we get a new software system that will do it for us. Well, a typical day depends on the time of year. If it's at the beginning of the school year, a typical day involves a lot of students coming in and wanting to change their schedule. Kind of have to ensure, as we're looking into making adjustments to a student's schedule, if it's going to adversely affect their graduation, trajectory. So we always have to make sure that they're meeting the graduation requirements. And then, there's a whole, I'm usually doing transcripts for admissions. I'm doing transcripts for college counseling, assisting them with the senior applications, making sure that they have all the previous transcripts. If it's a student that transferred into HPA, make sure they have the correct HPA transcripts. If it's closer to the end of the semester, then we're getting ready for finals. I'm assisting teachers with that, making sure that grades are in. Again, got to pull those transcripts for the seniors, send those out for the last minute applications. And as we get closer to the end of the year, we're busy with class registration, we're busy with AP exams, and then we're busy with end of the year grades, right before graduation, just so that we know everyone's supposed to graduate, and then getting those grades out and final transcripts to colleges. And then there's a lot of other minutia involved during the year, so keeps me busy. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, interestingly enough, for instance, take the science department. You can only use specific classrooms for specific classes. So chemistry can only be in room 31. So we have AP chemistry, chemistry honors, and regular chemistry. Those teachers also teach other classes. So we have to make sure that that we can work it out so that all the chemistry classes can fit in chemistry, but then we're able to get them assigned to their other blocks that they need to teach, anatomy and physiology, or fundamentals of science research, or any of the other classes that don't need to be in the chemistry room. Same with biology. Biology has to be in room 32 or room 41. And then physics has to be in room 42. So it's a little bit of a puzzle. And then it's teachers, we can't have AP Physics 1 being taught at the same time as AP Calculus, and you can't have, so there's a lot of just pieces of this puzzle that we have to look at very closely and make sure that none of them are conflicting in order to be able to present a schedule where students will have the maximum availability for their schedule and also be able to fit everything into a classroom. We actually started planning for next year. We try to light the fire under the teachers. Like, do they want to teach a different class? Usually by like October. So they can prep a proposal so that can go through the proper channels, and then it can be approved. So by the time we get to this point right now, it's ideal that we have everything, kind of all of our ducks in a row. It's actually not always the case. And unfortunately this year we're not quite there yet. So I'm hopeful that we'll get there in the next week or so and we can start making a schedule before spring break, but that may not happen. But ideally we will, and the goal is to get everybody, begin registration by like early to mid-April. So yeah, I was a 911 dispatcher in Oakland for a very long time, and one of the things that I really enjoyed about that job was the problem-solving aspects of it. That was a huge part of it, the critical thinking, the problem-solving. And that actually translates really well into this position, the problem solving, the critical thinking skills, the pieces of the puzzle, and trying to, put it together. And so that is something that I really like about this job, is that it just gives me that opportunity to utilize the same skills, but in a more positive environment, because, working at a police department is people aren't calling in because they're having a good day. So it is nice to have that in this environment. And then it's also nice because I work with people who I enjoy working with, who are really supportive, and we have a nice HPA ohana here, I think. As with the students, you add them in. I enjoy having them come into the office. There's not a lot of reason, unless there's something very specific that they want to talk about, for students to come in the middle of the year even. And so I like when they come in and just share their day. Come in, grab a little snack, tell me what's going on. And then sometimes talk about what they're thinking of for the next year, or like in your case, where you're going to go to school. It's nice to have those conversations and just kind of connect on that level. So I enjoy that part of it. I like being student facing, that's nice. Yeah. We are kind of the hub. We're kind of the hub of the wheel. And so a lot of what happens at the school, we're like the information gathering central location. We're that data point for if other people have questions like admissions or auxiliary or student life or administration, advancement. We are the keepers of a lot of that info, just because we see the trends, we see, the classes that we're offering and the things that students want or what they're requesting. And so it's really good to keep those lines of communication. I like when the students come in and let us know what it is that they're looking for, what they want, because we can hopefully get that message to the people that need to hear it and affect change. So